You can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine. Sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time. Cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis man, can. Who can take a story and make it feel so grand? Spread the word around about the wonders of this land. Mix it all with laughter and a sprinkle of insight. Cannabis man flies. Oh, cannabis man, spreading news and joy across the land. Diving deep into the glowing green. Cannabis man, we're all keen. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Welcome into another episode of the Cannabis Man podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen, and this is the critically acclaimed podcast where we're trying to take a journalistic look at all things legal cannabis. If it's your first time here, welcome. You can follow the show at C-Man Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating or review for the show. However you're listening to this, if it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're at, if you like what I'm doing here, a rating or review, subscribe to the show, share it with your friends. All of that helps me spread the word about this podcast. And those of you who've already done it, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It has helped bring this podcast into the top 10% of all the millions of podcasts around the globe. And publications like Good Pods and Listen Charts have listed this as the number 1 indie information podcast, number 3 in cannabis, top 5 in indie news as well. Lots of accolades pouring in for this, and I really cannot thank you enough for helping me make this happen. On this show, I like interviewing people who are in the space, experts, either users, longtime users like myself. I'm a broadcaster in Chicago. I do news and traffic on the radio, but I have been a cannabis user personally for almost 20 years here, more than half my life. I started when I was 18, and I turned to it because I found, after being introduced to it by some friends, that it helped me get to sleep at night, which is something I had always struggled with my whole life. I also found that it helped me with anxiety, dealing with any social issues, nerves, body pains, if I was getting into an exercise, lifting weights or whatever. Some people, really don't like that, and I say on the show all the time that, I don't believe that cannabis is for everybody, but there are many of us who have found that it helps us with certain, negative quality of life issues, and cannabis can offer improvement in those areas. And I just simply believe that for those of us who have found that it's right for us, we should be afforded the same freedoms that those people who turn to alcohol or caffeine or sugars or anything else that's normalized, we should get the same freedoms they do. And so I talk with those experts in the field if they are people who are looking to answer questions about cannabis, like researchers, doctors, scientists doing studies on it. I talk with entrepreneurs who are creating products and services relating to cannabis that all of us get to try now. I also like talking with policy leaders, policy makers, I suppose, politicians elected or appointed, who are now making laws in legal cannabis jurisdictions that are going to be the future framework for legal cannabis as it moves forward, which is something that I am chronicling all the time here on the Cannabis Man podcast. I have one such conversation for you this week. I'm speaking with Ben Meggs, co-founder of Bayou City Hemp. It is a big-time hemp company down in the South. They are available. Their products are big in Texas, big in Louisiana, and they are expanding to other states around the country, and I am looking forward to bringing you that conversation. I also have several news stories here local in Illinois, where I am, in Chicago, as well as national and global news stories that I thought were worth your attention that are related to cannabis. And of course, I've got my product review, the gummy that I've been on this week as part of the Best in Grass judging competition that I've been taking part in. That's still ongoing. And if you're interested in it, I can tell you later where you can still find your judging kits. This is going on until October 13th. A lot of cool products out there. And if you have a specific one that you love, like flower, whether sativa or indica, medical or recreational, if you like concentrates, if you like pre-rolls, if you like gummies or non-gummy edibles like chocolates, cookies, beverages, the whole 9 yards, Best in Grass has judging kits in various categories, and you can still get those, and I'll tell you where later. I am recording this episode right here on September 5th. It is Thursday night, and as I am talking to you right now, there is an NFL football game on, the opener of the 2024 season, Chiefs and Ravens right now, and man, I'm so excited to have football back. I don't know if you're a football fan at all, but here in the U.S., it is obviously huge. When fall comes around, football is very, very big through this season and winter, and I love the changing of the season, this late summer, fall area, this time of year, very, very special, and especially this year for my wife Gretchen and I, because our daughter Violet, this is her first fall, her first football season. She's still going through a lot of firsts. We actually gave her a frozen waffle this morning, kind of her first solid food. Not that she ate the whole thing, it's more of a teether because it's cold and it's something she can just kind of chomp on whenever she's feeling any teething discomfort. But that was really kind of cool to see her eyes light up just getting her first kind of taste or chomp of a frozen waffle, I suppose. And there's just many, many more of those ahead. Lots of, cool things. I can't wait to show her some Packers football because that is my team, even though I am a, lover of the city of Chicago. And, it's to my mom's everlasting shame. Unfortunately, she's a diehard Bears fan, and her dad, my grandpa Lion, almost played for the Bears, but I have a lot of fond memories of being up in Milwaukee. I was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin. We lived in Milwaukee till I was about 5, and my dad's family still lives there. We go up there a lot, and I have a lot of fond memories of watching Packers games at my grandma's house, eating great food, being there with the family, and, when I was 9 or 10 years old and I was choosing my team, kind of that rite of passage that happens, I think, around that age. I guess the Packers just kind of won me over, and I've been wearing those colors ever since. And I definitely get a lot of shit for that living around Chicago, especially being in the media. Plenty of people love to take the opportunity to poke fun at it, but that rivalry's been pretty one-sided in favor of my team for the last few decades. So definitely not complaining on my end. But either way, love that football's back. Love that fall is in the air. You can almost smell that smell of the leaves. You can almost feel the cool crispness that fall air has. The nights are coming a little bit earlier. The light's fading a little earlier. And it's just it's a magical time of year, and I definitely look forward to it. It's a great time to get outside with cannabis products, whether you're somebody that burns joints, pre-rolls, very, very popular, or maybe you roll your own, maybe you grow your own stuff, or, like I've been with these gummies that I've been judging. Late at night, I've just been popping an edible, and sometimes stepping out for a walk, feeling the fresh air is really nice. A lot of great ways to enjoy cannabis. Vape pens are certainly fine too. Everybody has their preferred method of consumption. And I just think that fall is one of the best times to do it, whether you're around a campfire with people you're close with, or, maybe at a party with a bunch of strangers, or at a cannabis event. Plenty of great opportunities to avail yourself of some of these great new cannabis products out there. And if you live in a legal state like I do, Illinois, or a country where it's been legalized like Germany, partially doing that, Thailand, which has kind of been flip-flopping, but now they're sort of on the side of legalization, or one of the other countries, and you have your medical card where that aspect of it's legal. It is a fascinating time to be a connoisseur, a can enthusiast, if you like, anybody who is an avid consumer and supporter of the plant, and a voter for the end of this prohibition. It's definitely an exciting time to watch this landscape change every day right before our eyes, and that is part of the reason why I started this show. I love talking with people and bringing these conversations to to you about what cannabis can potentially offer your life. And whether you've tried it at any point, maybe had a bad experience, I'd like to shed some light on maybe how that happened. And if you're open to it, maybe trying again in the future, some ways that you can potentially avoid such a scenario again. And also the specific symptoms that you can try and address with various cannabinoids. THC and CBD are the ones that, have been known about for a long time now. There's a whole marketplace of CBD products, even, black market products that are not, fully legalized, these hemp-based ones where cannabis isn't legal. There are CBD, vape pens and gummies and the whole works. And so THC is the one that's been known as the cannabinoid that kind of is responsible for the high feeling, the narcotic portion of the plant. CBD has been, attributed many of the positive correlations with cannabis. And we're finding out a lot more through these studies and through a lot of the research that's being done now where the different cannabinoids can offer some certain symptom relief. If you're looking for the munchies, there's a cannabinoid that can supplement those. If you're looking for an appetite suppressant or maybe some energy, THCV is very popular in that regard. Sleep aid, like I mentioned earlier, CBN, that's what you want to be looking for at the dispensaries. CBG is a cannabinoid that I'll be talking about later. That has some very intriguing properties relating to anxiety. So there is some very exciting stuff happening on the cannabis front, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to start this show, so that I could spread this information and do my small part to kill the stigma that still lingers about this great plant from last century's propaganda and all the reefer madness nonsense we were all fed in the public education systems with DARE and all of that stuff. Cannabis is not at all what we were all told it was. The whole notion of a gateway drug, I think, is just such garbage. The real gateway drug is whichever the first one you tried was, because you found out, wow, this is chances are you found out this is something interesting, and maybe I'd like to try some other stuff. And that's kind of the way that I've come to think about gateway drugs at large. It's whichever the first one you tried is really the true gateway there, and it just kind of opens the door up to a bigger world of substances that you realize can have an effect on your systems and all that stuff. Anyway, that is enough rambling from me. Let's kick off this episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis broadcast.
Yeah, now we're in it, and I'd like to roll right into the News Joint Wrap. This is a wrap-up of news stories and events curated for you by IllinoisNewsJoints.com. It's the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And let's start with a familiar refrain on the website. Illinois' low medical cannabis sales linger. This article was published earlier today by Jason Brown of Illinois News Joint, and it's a familiar refrain, as I said, because this is a streak that has been going on for several months in a row now. And I'm really not going to go too deeply into it here because, as I've said on the podcast in the past, compared to the adult recreational sales, there are vastly fewer medical cannabis patients. And especially when you count all the out-of-state shoppers that are coming into Illinois from places like Wisconsin, Indiana, Iowa, these places where it's not yet legal, they're coming into Illinois and Michigan and Minnesota and these other states nearby, and those sales are adult rec sales. They're not medical patients. And so when you're looking at these sales totals, especially when people, I think, just as it happens in life, probably let their med cards lapse some of the time. Maybe you're not paying your licensing fee. Maybe you're not, getting out to wherever you need to get to in order to renew the med card or whatever. I think there are a lot of reasons why this state's medical medical cannabis sales have fallen the way they have, and it's not something that really concerns me one way or the other because the recreational sales for adults are still booming. They hit $1 billion earlier this year, July 1st, and I'm curious to see where that ends up by the end of 2024. Moving on, there's an event coming up this Saturday on the 7th from when I'm recording this. It's the Illinois Craft Showcase, the inaugural event put on by News Joint Events. It's going to host more than 30 licensed craft brands, 8 dispensaries, and 15 vendors. It's an open consumption event set for noon to 7 p.m. on the 7th at Molly's Joint in Tilton, Illinois. Attendees will have the opportunity to meet new brands representatives, sample some of the best products in Illinois, and you can get in for free. General admission tickets can be reserved at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. One of these craft licensees is Sweet Buzz, and there's a review of their peanut butter cups right here on IllinoisNewsJoint.com. I spoke with Elisa Brill last week on this show of Sweet Buzz. She described some of their other products like their Sweet Sparks, Cookie Got Creamed, Caramel Cookie Crunch, I believe, and Mint Chill cups. They also have this Sweet and Powder mix. They have an amazing array of products, and as Elisa says in our interview, the company was made by candy people. They're not cannabis people. They know how to make great tasting products, and now they're infusing those products, and I'm going to have a chance to review some Sweet Buzz products in the next month or so. I'm currently working through a bit of a backlog of the Best in Grass Illinois Edibles Judge Kit that I'm working through for the competition. I also have a lovely kit courtesy of OG's brands, and I'm going to be talking with their CEO pretty soon. I'll be going through those products and reviewing them for you, but really looking forward to getting into some of what Sweet Buzz has to offer, and you can read a review of their peanut butter cups right now and check them out for yourself at the Illinois Craft Showcase this Saturday. You can also learn more about the brand High Five, get a review of the Romulan vape cart by High Five. Love the Romulan name there, a bit of a Star Trek reference, and Gretchen and I just finished up Star Trek Voyager. Don't know if you're a fan, but man, Janeway, hard to get a better female role model for my daughter Violet as she grows up. We're really looking forward to showing her those. Another review here, London Pound Cake Sherbet Surf Disposable Vape by Bloom, and Fruit Basket Blunt by Lobo. Another event I want to tell you about is the Keefe Canna Fest, which is September 21st. Another Saturday, 2 weeks from this weekend, set for 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at High Harbor Cannabis Lounge and Event Center in Peoria. On-site consumption is permitted for that as well, and you can buy your tickets and find out more about that event and other news stories that I mentioned and some I didn't, all at IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Moving on, I'd like to get into my product review this week, and these gummies out of the Best in Grass Illinois Judge Kit that I worked on this week are the Strawberry Spacewalk X-Bites. Really love the name, and I found that name is not at all a misnomer. That's not just clever marketing there. I absolutely felt like I was going on a spacewalk when I took these gummies. On the front of the package, they're labeled as cannabis-infused gummies, extended liposomal tech, nice to say, extreme extended experience, all starting with X, I like that, 10 milligrams of THC per piece, and in this pack that they included in the Best in Grass Judge Kit, there are 5 total gummies, giving you 50 milligrams in the package. 10 calories per gummy, 0 grams of any fat, no cholesterol, no sodium, 2 grams of carbohydrates, which come from added sugars, no protein. The activation time they list is 30 to 45 minutes. Instructions for use: eat 1 individual gummy, then wait 30 minutes for initial onset and 2 to 4 hours for full effects. Chew thoroughly, always good advice. Do not eat on an empty stomach, that is. Do not consume more than suggested. Store in a cool, dry place. I'm going to be up front. I ignored 2 of those instructions. I did eat on an empty stomach, and I actually had 2 of these, and I'm going to tell you a little about how that went. Might explain why I felt like I was trapped on the International Space Station, a lot like those 2 astronauts who are still waiting for a ride home. That's kind of what I felt like when I took 2 of these gummies. I was a little out of my depth. I'm somebody that tends to take 2 10-milligram gummies because my tolerance tolerance is such that that's often what I'll need in order to really feel them, especially within an hour or so. And I've been taking these at night, so it's just a little bit more time efficient to take 2 of them if I want to feel what's what. But I'm going to recommend that you only take 1 of these strawberry Spacewalk X Bites because that's really all I needed. And I took 2 the first time, I took 1 the second time, and it was a lot more pleasant when I took the 1 and after I had dinner as well, so not on an empty stomach. But let me tell you a little bit about what I wrote down, because as I've mentioned, when I go through these judging portals, when I do this as I'm going through the kit, I write down my observations during my initial consumption of these as well as afterward to kind of get a little bit of a picture of what my overall review was and what their effect was on me. So as I mentioned, I took the Spacewalk gummies, 2 10 milligrams each. I said first, did not like the taste. I mentioned that it tastes soapy and with sort of an infused zing. I don't know if you know what I mean, but a lot of infused gummies have a very specific taste. It's kind of like what the old vaporizers, if you're familiar with these, anything other than a volcano that filled the bag. If you had one of those vapes that would be like a little black box that was next to your bed, and you would attach like a silicone hose to it, and you would just turn it on and toast a little cup of cannabis, and then you would, inhale through the hose. They always tasted a bit like a tuna melt to me. There was a very specific taste to all the vaporizers. Thankfully, Dynavap and a lot of other great vaporizer makers now have made the dry herb vape game so much better. But I digress. I bring that up because I find now that a lot of gummies have this sort of infused aftertaste, and I did get a little bit of that with these Spacewalk gummies. It also tasted, as I said, soapy, reminded me of Mondo or Kool-Aid, if you remember those drinks from our younger years. Maybe they're still around, I just don't have them anymore. But it was sort of ripe with false sweetness, is what I wrote down here. The aftertaste, as I wrote, was a bit like I bit into a candle. Then I ended up going to sleep after becoming super stoned, and I revisited this journal the morning after, and my thoughts are thus: wow, was I stoned last night. It took about 75 to 90 minutes to really hit, but Spacewalk is a fitting name because by 9:30 I was straight up mercurial. 30 seconds to Mars, the whole works. Almost too stoned, a bit panicky, with thoughts of death. That is something grim that I don't, certainly I don't seek that out. It has been something that's accompanied any times that I've been over the line of stoned lately. I'm not talking about suicidal thoughts here. It's more just sort of reflecting on the impermanence of life, knowing that at some point it is going to wrap up, and, it's just not pleasant. That's not why I take a gummy. I want to relax after a day of work. I want to chill out, think about something stupid, like, I don't know, like what's a banana peel? Like, what is that even made of? Why so tough? I want to reflect on that kind of dumb things. I want to reflect on, why there are bats around the city of Chicago, like we just saw flying by our window the other night. I want to reflect on that kind of stuff, not thoughts of death. So I did have a little alcohol before I had these 2, and I thought by then it should have been out of my system. Either way, the main thing was that when I took 2 of these, it was too much. I enjoyed it much better taking it one at a time, just like the package instructs, but the taste either way was still bad, soapy, but the high was intense. I don't recommend it for beginners, a bit like a tightrope walk over a volcano. Detached, but I did sleep very, very well. So that was my thoughts about the Strawberry Spacewalk X Bites. You can find these, more information about them, as well as where they're available near you at selectbetter.com. Or, as I said, go ahead and get yourself one of these gummy Best in Grass, Illinois edible judge kits, which are still available at dispensaries until October 13th. You can check out my interview with Mark Kazanek from a few weeks ago. He listed all of the places where they're available, or I believe you can find a list of dispensaries selling the kits at bestingrass.io. That website has the judging portal, and it also has a list of which dispensaries have these kits. Listener, my My guest today has a very interesting journey to tell us about, and he's going to be talking about something that I've been bringing up a lot on the show lately. You've heard me talk a lot about the 2018 Farm Bill, which allowed hemp products to be sold across the U.S. under a certain threshold of cannabinoids in terms of THC and the others. If you haven't heard me talk about it, listen to any of the last 5, 6, 7 episodes that I've been speaking with different people about, and you can get into some of the intricacies about this, but there have been recent efforts here in Illinois, where I am, as well as nationally. There have been some proposals to the Illinois legislature and the U.S. House of Representatives to make an effort to kind of ban hemp products in different states, and then the House of Representatives are taking up a similar measure. And this has to do with the safety of products and stuff like that, but that threat is obviously of big concern to the multitude of businesses that have popped up since that 2018 Farm Bill, because, as you know, there have been a proliferation, that is easy for me to say, of hemp beverages that have hit the markets, whether those are bars, liquor stores, festivals. There have been a ton of hemp beverages and edibles like gummies and other products that have hit the market, and they're fantastic. And I also love that the hemp products, because they're not, the same as THC regulated products in dispensaries, they can go across state lines, which is also very, very exciting. And so obviously this concern about safety and the potential ban of these products is, as I said, a major concern to business owners. And one of those business owners is my guest today. This is the co-founder and the CEO of Bayou City Hemp, and they are a Southern company. They are very big in Texas and Louisiana, and they've recently made some purchases of other businesses, and they've expanded where consumers can get their products, which stores, and where you can find them. And here to talk about the hemp products, the journey of their company, as well as maybe where this stuff is heading in terms of the hemp beverage markets and more in the future of legal cannabis, is Ben Meggs of Bayou City Hemp. Welcome, Ben. Thanks for coming on today.
Hey, Don. I appreciate you having me, and excited to be on the podcast and talk a little bit about Bayou City Hemp Company and what we're doing here in the South, and then specifically, where we're located here in Texas.
And that's perfect. And I know that I kind of jumped ahead because I do want to get to your origin story and kind of how you guys got started. But, because of the recent efforts to kind of ban some of these products, I'm sure that, you guys heard about that where you are as well. I don't know about Texas or Louisiana making efforts like Illinois did to try and ban some of these. But I guess before we get into that, I suppose I would like to kind of hear where did your own cannabis journey start, and how did Bayou City kind of get up and rolling with this Farm Bill in 2018?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our leadership team here at Bayou City Hemp Company is largely from oil and gas, at least.
We'll be right back.
Hey there, listener. How does this sound to you? An evening of laughs, meeting new people, wonderful cannabis, and delicious food, all enjoying some live performances on stage. How does that sound to you? Because if it sounds good like it does to me, you need to check out my friends at Comedy. This is a cannabis-infused dinner and comedy club which puts on performances across various Chicago venues and in the surrounding suburbs. Picture this. You head to a new venue, doors open, and food infused with lovely cannabis is served at 5:30. Music is playing, you mingle with new people, and you're just coasting until those delicious infusions hit your system. You are able to bring your own cannabis, and depending on the venue, you can smoke it, you can eat it, you can drink it, however you like consuming it, bring your own, and you can enjoy it there. 8 p.m., comedians hit the stage, and depending on how many there are, shows end between 9:30 and 10. Stoner Nat says she was inspired to create Comedy by the great comic Lenny Bruce, who was not afraid to veer into politics and serious topics, but knew just how to take the sting out of them with a laugh. Cannabis, food, music, and comedy, these are things which can bring people together and maybe share their stories. bringing joy, comfort, and the healing medicine of laughter to a world that can certainly use it. Find out more and get tickets to the next event at canocomedy.com/events.
Four of us are. And so, Jeremy Sherman and I, he's my co-founder and partner. We started this in 2018. Right when the Farm Bill passed, we started, thinking about how we could get involved, how we might be able to build a business around this. We were, we're very entrepreneurial, just by background. And so, we always had a big affinity for cannabis, and we knew that, what eventually there's going to be an opportunity where these products are on mainstream shelves. Of course, we didn't at the time know that it would look anything like it does. But we played a little bit on the side, on the fringes of the CBD space. And then when we realized that the Farm Bill was going to pass, and then subsequent to that, Texas was going to pass House Bill 1325. We knew, okay, somebody's going to be building businesses around this. And we know that, in the oil and gas world, you've got your three parts, and regardless of the price of oil or natural gas, the refineries make the money. And so we wanted to build the infrastructure. It takes a lot of expertise, takes a lot of capital. And we thought we had good experience to be able to put that together and build the infrastructure to where we could kind of create our own destiny, regardless of whether we're an ingredient supplier or a finished goods supplier, or, as we've done, create our own brand. So did a big capital raise. We built a, GMP NSF certified facility here in Houston. And we originally started just like anybody else. Once we were fully built out, we were an ingredient supplier, and the price of cannabinoids changed pretty dramatically in a very short amount of time. From the time we started our capital raise till the time we were up and running, it was more than a 10x drop. So
wow.
As you can imagine, that changed a little bit of our economics. And we always planned to go into finished goods just because we wanted to be into, at the time, the hemp market, which was, this was 4 years ago, and almost 5. And we were, the market wasn't what it is today. And so, we knew we wanted to have a medical presence, because in Texas, although it's very restricted, it's still a pretty, at the time, it was a prized opportunity. And so, in order to have that in Texas, you have to be vertically integrated. You have to do every single part of the process. And so, for us, when prices dropped, we knew, okay, well, we've got to go to finished goods anyway. It was always the plan. Let's just kick that up and move it sooner, right? Let's pivot to that part of the business sooner. And we did. And, it really allowed us to be able to build a business on contract manufacturing. And so, and in order to go get that business, we wanted to, we're down here in Texas where nobody knew we really existed and what we were doing. So we created our own brands to highlight our capabilities, and we took those out to market, and then we built a business on contract manufacturing. And mostly through, we, as any startup does at the time, if someone asked for it, we generally figured out how to make it. That's just the nature of startups and this type of business. And now, of course, we only do gummies and beverages. But at the time, we co-manned several different products. And then, when we first got started, we loved beverage. We wanted to be in beverage somehow, and we hired our first PhD chemists, and one of them still works here till this day. But they did their doctorates in gold particles, nanoemulsions, and so that really gave us a clear understanding and pathway to creating our own nanoemulsion. Wow! And which would then subsequently allow us to create these beverages that we wanted to create at the time. And, we did that, very successful in that, but we didn't have any canning capabilities or anything. So we were just making beverage pumps and additives and things like that. It was very early on. This is 2012, 21, very
Sure.
early parts of 2021. So we knew we wanted to be in beverage, and then we, very fortunately, we got introduced as we were, contract manufacturing. We got introduced to Eighth Wonder, which is a decade-old brewery here in Texas, and through a local chef here. And so, we kicked it off, and they wanted to make a THC beverage. We had the cannabis capabilities; they had the beverage capabilities, and we did that, and we created Wonder Water. That was their first brand that they rolled out with, and it quickly became the number one item at the tap room and the number one item sold to go at the tap room. So we knew we were onto something really, really early on, and we made a couple of beverages, and then really, we started to see some opportunity for our own brands to make it out there, and we wanted to eliminate. We already own the entire vertical on the cannabis side, except for growing. We do not grow hemp just because it's not really economically feasible to do so right now.
Sure.
At our scale.
Mm-hmm. I got
And
you.
so we own that side. We've got, we've got the nano emulsion. We have all those capabilities. And then, as we were, it just so happened that the medical license opened up right at the time that, we were really leaning into beverage. And so we didn't, in Texas as it is, with medical, and even in Florida or anywhere else, right? You need a retail component, you need manufacturing, and eventually, you need a brand that has some trust.
Right.
And so, we saw all those things in Eighth Wonder, and it just so happened that they had the beverage capabilities too. And, we got together, discussed it, and, it was a good opportunity to lean in, make an offer. And, right at the time, of course, we closed on that acquisition in May of 2023.
Okay.
And the minute we closed on that, I think Eighth Wonder maybe had 24 SKUs. We SKU rationed that down to 4 year-round beer SKUs. And then
Wow.
Our 3 THC brands, we did a complete rebrand, if you will. Now what our brands are, we have a portfolio of cannabis lifestyle brands, and that's Howdy, which is really the cosmic cowboy vibe. And then we have Beach Break, and then we have Eighth Wonder, which has several SKUs under it as well. And, as when we rebranded the 3 brands that we have, the market, and quite frankly, about 6 months after maybe 8 months after we closed on the Eighth Wonder acquisition, the market just started opening up pretty dramatically. And so, obviously that deal looked, it was timed very, very well.
Yeah.
Because we had an opportunity to get it integrated before this market really took off. And that really allowed us to, Eighth Wonder allowed us to own the entire vertical.
We'll be right back.
It really is amazing living in a state where cannabis has been legalized, or a country. It's just really cool still to me to be able to go to a dispensary and buy different products. But what's even more amazing than that is growing your own cannabis at home. And if you're able to do that where you are, but maybe the prospect is a little intimidating. Maybe you've never grown anything by yourself before at home. Maybe you don't have the equipment. Maybe you don't even know where to start. Well, if the idea is appealing to you and you've thought about starting a home grow, allow me to recommend my friends at Bloom's Brothers Hydro. These guys are the best. They know exactly how to get you started or how to improve your grow operation. Wherever you are in your journey, they can help you, and they have the products you need to get this done. They've got lines in stock from Horticulture Lighting Group, Nectar for the Gods, Green Grow, Fox Farm, Royal Gold Soils, and more. And hey, maybe growing cannabis is old hat for you at this point. Maybe you've been doing it for a while, you know all you need to know about it, but maybe you've been looking to expand your garden and add a fungal element to it. Cannabis flower is great, but it doesn't go great on a pizza, unlike mushrooms. Those are delicious on a pizza. And if you've been interested in researching this prospect, adding some of that fungus to your own home grow, Bloom's Brothers Hydro has you covered there too. They've got supplies from Uncle Mike's, Southwest Shroomery, Redwood Mushroom Supply, and Dr. Mike's as well. You can find Bloom's Brothers Hydro inside the Apple House on Harding Avenue in Terre Haute, Indiana. They're open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 11 a.m. to 5 on Sundays. For more information, follow them on Instagram at Apple House Hydro. You can email Fred at theapplehouse.com or call 812-232-1495 to get all the information that you're looking for. Remember, if you're thinking about starting or expanding a home grow, check out the guys at Bloom's Brothers Hydro.
All the way through to the distributors. And, the key for that acquisition of the things that I mentioned, brand, it's a decade-old brewery, had a lot, it's a trusted brand, a lot of beverage capacity, manufacturing capacity, a lot of expertise there. And, one obvious answer is it gave us distribution, and not just a little distribution. It gave us some pretty meaningful distribution into the state of Texas. And that was a big key for this really taking off. And, as we leaned into our brands further and further, it just made sense to, really eliminate the contract manufacturing side of the business, and focus solely on our own brands.
A lot of really cool stuff in there, Ben. Thanks for sharing the story, because that is, it is really, the timing, as you said, turned out to be really fortunate for you guys, because I think there were many people who took notice of that 2018 Farm Bill, and I think people tried. There was a lot of attempt to kind of get into hemp businesses and such. And, some of those products that were made, and I'm talking about ones like all around the country, there's a wide spectrum, a very, a lot of range between the quality of a lot of those products. But it's interesting that, as you said, the timing of the acquisition for you guys of Eighth Wonder in May of last year, that's 5 years from that 2018 bill passing, the Farm Bill, and yet last year around this time, heading into the summer, is really when a lot of these businesses reported that the interest in like hemp beverages, as well as gummies, but I think the beverage space really did explode right at that time. So obviously it did work out for you guys, and I think that's cool to take that momentum and run with it. That's just good business sense and all of that. But I've talked about on the show before the many reasons why I think the hemp beverage space has exploded the way that it has. One of, not the least of the reasons being that I really do feel like people are reevaluating their relationship with alcohol, both here in America and worldwide, for different reasons. But I think alcohol is so baked into our social interactions. Anybody who has tried to take some time away from drinking for any length of time, I do dry months, I do different periods without it, and whenever I'm doing that, you go to a party, you go to a social event, and there are inevitably questions that follow. If you don't have a drink in your hand, there are people who want to know why. And we can get into, with all the social and psychological elements of that, but the point really is alcohol has baked its way into our social interactions of society. And so these hemp beverages have come along, and not only is the quality good, but a lot of the time they're lower calories. You can play with the flavor. You can play with the cannabinoids, which offers such a wide variety of feelings for the consumers that you give them so many more options compared with just alcohol at a time when they're looking for them. And the social, train can keep on moving, where people can take the break from alcohol and nobody looks at them sideways, because you can still have a can in your hand, but that can is just a hemp beverage instead of a beer or a cocktail or a wine or whatever. And I'm sure you guys have seen that down in Texas and Louisiana where you're operating as well. I'm sure over the last year and maybe even before that. Yeah?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the shift in the market has been dramatic. I think and certainly here in the South, I mean, it's no secret, Texas is one of the largest acquirers and consumers of alcohol in the country.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, sure, the sheer population in general, but there's just a lot of alcohol drink in Texas. And I think, COVID was a very unique thing in that it caused, at least here specifically, and I think in the broader United States as well, alcohol consumption. I mean, it skyrocketed.
Absolutely.
Right when COVID first hit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all remember that everybody was drinking more, and then all of a sudden, as with anything, there's just only so long you can do that before you start feeling maybe not
shit.
Yourself or not who you want to be.
Yeah,
less than.
Exactly. Right. You just you moderation is whatever, and so anything that you lean into, as far as we all did with alcohol during the pandemic, I think it just makes sense, as you're saying, like there is an inherent correction that comes with like diving into that deep end of that behavior. You just, your body and your mind eventually start screaming at you that this can't go on forever.
That's exactly right. And I think the most unique thing about COVID was that increase in alcohol consumption. And then, this was the longest situation, I'll call it, that we've had, at least in our generations. What was unique is that how quickly the pendulum swung back after people started being at home, focusing on their health, focusing on, being better than what they felt like the last 6 months or a year. And so I think that dramatic shift in the consumer, and I've said this before, you've got the big alcohol brands that have been trying to shift consumer minds and spending billions and billions of dollars to do so for years and years, and they can't do it. No amount of money can do it. It took this type of event to cause that, and now the unique part about that is it's happening at the perfect time where consumers are wanting an alternative and they want less alcohol. They care more about their bodies. And alcohol's not going anywhere, but there's no secret that every generation is drinking less, and alcohol is down in a very big way right now.
Yeah, you're 100% right, man. I know that since we're about a decade into states legalizing cannabis in some form, and then obviously we're 5-6 years into the hemp bill, the farm bill allowing hemp. So in that time, that's a good amount of time to look at behavior changes. And as you say, every year, that generation, they're just drinking less. It's just the way it's going.
That's right. That's just the consumer. That's the way it's going. I'm sure there'll be studies to figure out what was the reasoning behind that and what caused it. But that's the data, and that's what we're seeing. And so the second part of that, the converging of forces is COVID created that. And the second part of that, at least, from our perspective and the way we see it is that in the history of really since Prohibition, there hasn't been anything on mainstream shelves that consumers can take that provide anything similar to alcohol. Right. And so at the same time, consumers are wanting something different than alcohol. They're not saying they don't want anything. They just want something different.
Yeah, of course.
But they still want to take the edge off.
Exactly. As you say, nobody, like, the lowering desire of alcohol does not mean everyone wants to live sober all the time. That's right. That's not
exactly right.
Right. That's not the turn that's happening. They just want alternatives to very well-trod path of getting drunk,
And with that, because there's never been an alternative, and look, we can talk, and we'll go into, dispensaries and whether, on the marijuana side, and, that's not necessarily the market we're going after. That's probably the biggest spender, but it's 5% of the population going into the dispensaries. We're going after the soccer moms, the people who are going to shop on the grocery store shelves, the C-store shelves, on those mainstream sales channels, and I think that's really the forces that you're seeing. It's the first time that an alternative product that provides the edge being taken off that does not provide for a hangover. It's the first time that's happened, and you're starting to see that. And the fact that it's sessionable, it has the same. I think it's going to have higher velocities than alcohol, but you also have. It's such an approachable product because consumers are used to drinking alcohol. They're not used to lighting a bowl up. Right. That's just, it's stigmatized. It's frowned upon. It has a smell. Oh, yeah. It has all of these things that we were taught in the 80s of the, DARE, all the different things that they were pushing, the war on drugs and X, Y, and Z. Oh, yeah. And so the beverage is not frowned upon. You're just sitting there drinking a beverage with your friend, and nobody associates the problem with in my mind, marijuana is they associate somebody smoking a bowl or, and the smell associated with it. It's the activity of it and what's associated with it. With the beverage, there's nothing to frown upon. People have been drinking beverages for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
Right.
That's what this is. It's a very approachable and responsible format to open consumer minds to a healthy alternative.
Yeah, well said, Ben. I think you're right on about that. I talk about the stigma a lot, and that everything you just mentioned, the DARE education, the war on drugs, all of that, the reefer madness stuff from last century.
Right.
That stigma is totally still around. I mean, it is in interactions, and that's still there. I talk about it a lot. Here it's part of what led me to even starting this show. I just wanted to have more conversations like this one, where we're talking about the quality of life benefits that are offered and what these cannabinoids and products can do for people, rather than just kind of repeating the same old Cheech and Chong jokes and, banging the drum of stoner, propaganda like that.
Absolutely.
Stereotypes, that's what made me want to do this. And to your point, I think the act of smoking, I think that whole, whether it's putting it in a bowl, a bong, a joint, and then don't even get me started about the concentrates when you have the dab rig and all of that.
Yep.
All that stuff is not really approachable for, as you said, the soccer moms, the people on golf courses, the barbecuers with family. All of that stuff is like college dorm room. It's just thought of differently, and the stigma is still there. Whereas, as you point out, with beverages, those have been around since well before the prohibition of alcohol or cannabis. Those have been around since before we were, even like societies properly. They've been around since we were like nomadic and just gathering around campfires and stuff like that. So I do
think... Absolutely right.
Yeah, man. I think this beverage space, there are a lot of reasons why it presents the opportunity it does, why people are more comfortable with it, the lower barrier to entry, and just how much more normalized that activity is. On this topic, I want to bring up, this move that was done in Illinois here just a couple of weeks ago, and then followed in the U.S. House of Representatives, where you had a state rep, actually the same one from here in Illinois, go to the House and say, hey, listen, some of these products are unsafe. They're targeting children. A lot of the same old, you could say they're valid concerns, but it's also kind of banging the reefer madness drum again, where it's a lot of painting a picture of irresponsible product creators and sort of, again, targeting of a vulnerable population. So I have to imagine that you, like a lot of other hemp beverage makers as well as hemp product makers, had to take notice when there was a representative proposing to ban effectively all hemp products under a new amendment to the Farm Bill as it exists. Tell me about what the environment in terms of the reception from the hemp beverages, not just from consumers, but from like policymakers down in Texas, in Louisiana. And were you guys at all, are you at all concerned about the House of Representatives considering such a ban on these products? Yeah,
I mean, look, I think we've been in this game long enough, and I'm not going to say we're OGs and we've been in cannabis since, the early 2000s, but from the hemp space and we are OGs. We've been very early on, and certainly in the South. And I think that I've got two things to say about this. One, we're always concerned about that because you just never know when, you just never know when somebody's going to try to pull the rug out from under you for whatever the cause may be, right? It can be certain interest. It can be, we can get into what different causes of the action might be from her letter, but ultimately, what I believe is, I think it's the Farm Bill was written very specific. These are very smart people who write these words. And if you go through and read the definition of hemp, there's you can't, like the words that are written in there that come after, the 0.3 delta 9, all of your isomers, all the different things, like the scientists who got behind there and said they know what that means. But even if we go back and say nobody knew what they were doing, X, Y, and Z, we have to stop pretending that this is going away. We have to stop pretending that this is not a 30-40 billion dollar industry that's going to it's going into the hundreds of billions, and then it's going to be one of the largest markets in the United States and in the country and the world. And so
Yep.
I think we have to stop pretending that it can be stopped anymore in the sense that you've got all this hodgepodge framework on the marijuana side. Okay. I think we saw very quickly when the market, they started to, just like any other market, right? It's growth and production at any cost, raise, and then all of a sudden investors get skeptical, and you got to be profitable. You have to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we saw that happen in the marijuana space. And the key is that you can't move when you have to build infrastructure in every single state. It's just not economic.
Totally.
You're going to spend billions and billions of dollars to create it 50 times.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And so, that happened, which wasn't clearly not great framework from an economic standpoint. It's just not. Then the hemp market came in, and it was too much of a free for all. I think everybody feels like that. You can see it, and we're all about access. But at the same time, you do have to be responsible out there, and there are bad actors anywhere. So, I think from the get-go, I think it's very easy for me to say letters like this and complete outright bans and different things. I think it's foolish to think that you're going to write a letter and then all of a sudden this is going to go away. This is written into Congress passed this. It's written into statute. People have built businesses on this. There's an industry now in the United States that is growing probably more rapidly than any other industry in the United States. And it's around hemp.
Oh God, yes. I think you're totally right about that. It is the fastest growing business right now, no question.
And we need to stop pretending that politicians are not going to look at that. They're not just going to decimate an industry that's bringing in this much revenue. And I think you saw it happen. I mean, one of the most conservative governors in the country just vetoed a bill that, quite frankly, was probably one of the most reasonable, at least from a low dose perspective. I think the cap was 50 milligrams. I don't know any state that's put a 50 milligram cap in. They've been much lower than that.
Right.
And that was vetoed. So I'll leave it at that. I think we need to stop pretending, and I think we need to get very, very serious about meaningful regulations and legislation around this. We're all about pushing out the bad actors, but we're all about keeping complete access to this plant as well. To keep it short, I do think we need to stop pretending that this is just we're just gonna snap our fingers and poof, this industry is gonna be gone. The problem is it's not only, remember that the consumer that used to use cannabis still uses cannabis, and they'll probably always use cannabis no matter what happens here. The problem is that the older generations in this country, our parents, our grandparents, have started to use these products for sleep and other items. And I'm not making any claims here, but I can tell you that there is evidence from the consumer that says this works for them.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to have a very hard time changing their mind on that. And I guess what I'm trying to say by that is that the consumer is asking for it. They're demanding it, quite frankly. Further to that, you have the retailers that are stepping in a very big way, and you have distributors that are stepping in a very big way. So when the Farm Bill was around a year ago, and just like all the state legislation that, we've had 2 legislative sessions in Texas where they have failed. They have not been able to outlaw this. And we're coming up on another one in this spring in 2025. And the biggest part about that is when we were able to defeat all of, the bans around this, and then really across the country, and even with the Farm Bill, we didn't have any support. These were small businesses just trying to create something. And look who's in this game now. It may not be public, but if you name them, they are looking at it. Big alcohol is in, big distribution is in, the big marijuana companies are in. There's really no secret that this is a real business. It's a real opportunity. It's something the consumers want. It has the velocities that allow it to sit on shelf and take the space of other alcohol items that, quite frankly, a lot of products along the way have had a hard time taking that shelf space. Well, there's no problem with this taking shelf space. The consumer wants it. And I think that's why you have the biggest change here. And I think that's why you see, certainly in Florida, the tide's turning with the veto of the bill there.
You made a lot of great points there, Ben, and thanks for spelling it out that way, because I have seen and heard exactly as you just pointed out, not just in my own personal life. I mean, that's something that I said at the very beginning of the show. I mean, I'm a cannabis user of almost going on 20 years here, more than half my life. And one of the reasons why I gravitated toward it as much as I did was at first because of the help with sleep that it gave me. It was something I struggled with my whole life, and now to this day, it's still something I rely on to help me get to sleep. And that secret is out there. Everybody really is discovering that for themselves, and now enough people have, and I've spoken with a lot of them right here on this show. I've spoken with plenty of people who, they are of a certain age or even older, and they have discovered this, whether it's beverages, gummies, even like a vape pen, like 1-to-1. But some of these products, whichever, medium speaks to them, they're getting a major quality of life improvement. And as you were just saying, that's the part of it that's not going quietly into the night. And the people that are sending these letters saying, oh, maybe we can just end this party, as you kind of pointed out, it's too late for that, because those who would send the letters like this thinking that they can just shut the lights off and people will go home, they're thinking of this as like Burning Man or some temporary festival. And but it's not that. This is brick and mortar. This is a foundation for a future that people are very excited to take part in, whether it's the alternative to alcohol, just the help sleeping, or with pain, with chronic pain, getting relief from that. It's all stuff I've definitely talked about here before, but that is, I think, what you're speaking to in terms of why this isn't going to go away anytime soon. The normalization is happening rapidly. And in the states and the cities where this is getting legalized, countries as well outside the U.S. here, when kids are growing up in those places where you have hemp beverages on store shelves alongside beer and other products of the like, that does more to normalize this and kill the stigma than anything that I could say into this microphone, or that anybody could kind of, portray a picture. That, as you may hear, is my daughter Violet. She is just as incensed about this as I am. In terms of, hemp products and this attitude here. But I've been saying that for a while, Ben, is just that this is doing more. These hemp products that you at Bayou City Hemp and these others who are responsibly putting beverages on store shelves, giving people an alternative that they're crying out for. When you do that and succeed, that does more to normalize this stuff than anything else could. And kids growing up in that and just living life thinking that this is normal, that is going to make a future where the stigma we were kind of talking about is hopefully going to fall by the wayside, because is just how it goes in society. As more generations move forward without that stigma, that's the thing that ends up killing it. People don't necessarily change their minds about big stuff unless they try it for themselves, which I think some of the people who've tried these hemp products, they actually have changed their minds. But you did bring up Florida, and that, I think that's a great point, because that was a very recent thing that's happened here. The governor there, Ron DeSantis, who has vetoed a bill which, as you were kind of bringing up before, it was very conservative, and there are many people in Florida. I've seen recent polls, just like the country at large. You're talking about maybe 2/3 of the people there want to see some of these products on shelves, but the governor there still vetoing it. If you can, because I'm sure that there's overlap between the consumers in Florida as well as Texas and Louisiana. Talk a little about, what happened in Florida and how that might inform, this debate going forward.
Yeah, the Florida piece was really unique. There was a cap that was going to be put in place, and I think largely, the regulation around hemp and the banning it originally was put on by, the large marijuana players. We've heard, I have no real evidence, but I think it's out there. And I think that's changing rapidly. But anyway, there was a cap that was put in. I think it was 50 milligrams total, but it was 5 milligrams per serving, no more than 10 servings. Okay. So that's a pretty, it's still restrictive, but it's not like a 5 milligram cap like they have in some states.
Right. Yes.
And that seemed to be a pretty reasonable bill that was going to pass. It passed the House, it passed the Senate, and then the governor vetoed it, meaning there's no caps in place. You can have 200 milligrams in a beverage if you want there, technically speaking.
Interesting.
In hemp.
Yeah.
And so what's really odd and really weird is that one of the most conservative governors vetoed a restriction on hemp. So now it's still a free for all. So that was a very big change of pace, and I think the reason behind that is because that's where the constituents like to get their products, on mainstream shelves. They don't want to have to go to a dispensary and get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's still kind of a bummer, as you say, like with that regulation that would have, the limitation that would have come through. And I'm sure there were other parts of that bill that may have been better for consumers at large, but it does make sense as to maybe why that could have been the reason why he would have vetoed it then.
Yeah, and look, we'll see how Florida plays out, but for now, it's a completely open market, and will be since that bill has been vetoed.
Yeah.
And so we're excited for that. We actually do have a product that's 100 milligrams, but it's a spirit, but it's a spiritless spirit, if you will. But it's for the back bar, right? It's for bars and restaurants, so they can still sell a $10 or $15 cocktail without alcohol.
That's very cool. It's more. It sounds like something I'd like to try, man. That sounds awesome. Yeah,
for sure. And we'll get you some, no doubt. And so, as it relates to Texas and other states, it's a hodgepodge of what's going on. But the Florida piece was the biggest piece to see that it would appear that as it relates, DeSantis and some of the more right-leaning conservatives are leaning towards the hemp direction, which is very unique to see that play out right now. Yeah. And again, I think I don't think we're necessarily competing. I think maybe I think it's two different markets, and I think there's opportunity for everyone. For us, we believe in meaningful regulation. We want access to this plant, but we also believe that no, we don't want kids to get their hands on this. I've got 3 children myself. We're very big believers in making sure that the product that's getting put out is of high quality. It's made at the right place. You've got all the right testing on it, and we keep the markets open. I mean, that's what we're looking for. And with that, right now we have, at least as it relates to our gummies and beverages, outside of the multi-serve products such as draft beer, draft THC and then the spiritless spirit, if you will. Everything we have is under 10 milligrams. And the reason for that is not because we don't believe in a higher dose market eventually. It's just there's a few things that you have to do. Right now, we're in the middle of legislative sessions everywhere. And it's very important for us to show that we can self-regulate and be socially responsible. And so we put our products out there that way. We have, I think, 10 different SKUs of beverages, and every single SKU of beverage has a matching, both in potency and flavor, gummy. And, we chose to do child-proof packaging. We chose, I think the law in Texas is 18 and up. We chose to make it 21 and up on all of our products. We've also chosen to, maintain this low dose product because we believe that the consumers we're going after are not as familiar with this product. They're kind of curious. They might not have ever tried it, or maybe they haven't smoked, weed since college, or eaten a brownie that they, made for the first time in college. Right. And they got a job and they couldn't do those things, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of people out there, a much broader base of the population that is not familiar with these products. And we believe it's our responsibility and duty to put these products out there where they can have a good experience to where they want to try it again. That's really the first part. The second part is we want this to be sessionable. You mentioned earlier that it's weird. You go to a bar and maybe you don't want to drink alcohol. Well, then what, you're drinking water or not doing anything. Like it's a social aspect of life, holding a drink. Mm-hmm. And we want to be able to provide that, and we want it to be sessionable, which means it needs to be low dose. We also we want the velocities to compete with alcohol. That's really the only way that you're going to get shelf space, and that's the only way you're going to get in bars and restaurants, is if the consumers want it as much as they want the alcohol.
Sure.
And what we've seen is they do, and they want more of it.
Yeah, that's a great point too, Ben. A lot of great stuff in there as well. And I think that sessionable part of it really is huge. I mean, when we're talking about the alternative part of this to alcohol, it's like not just, going to the bar after work or whatever third space you go to between work and home. It's really hard for bad actors to get in on beverage production, especially distributing it in multiple states like you guys are. And so I love what you guys are doing. Yes. Where can people who are looking for Bayou City Hemp products, where can people find you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, in Texas, you can find us Specs, Total Wine, over 1,000 different restaurants and bars and independent liquor stores. We're in convenience stores. We're in several grocery stores, not any of the big ones, but there's a Wheatsville Co-op in Austin. That's a really great account. And then, of course, you can get our products online. And then in other states we're in, you can get them in Louisiana, Tennessee. In July, we go live in Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Mississippi. And there's probably some more states I'm missing, but there's plenty of places you can get them. That's for sure.
That's amazing. Just checking. Now, you mentioned a couple of different brands that you guys have before too. Real quick, if you can just list what those brands are, and if there's a website people can go to for like a store locator near them.
Yeah, Howdy.com. It's a great brand. And then we've got Beach Break, which is at sitbeachbreak.com. Grams on those, and then we've got our third brand is under eighthwonder.com, and that's going to be your Lil Bit and your Wonder Water.
Thank you so much for taking the time for stopping in today, if you can.
Appreciate the time, and look forward to having another conversation once again.
And there you have it, listener. I want to thank again my guest, Ben Meggs of Bayou City Hemp. Really like the attitude that Ben has and the philosophy that they have. Good information there about hemp-made products and a little bit of a snapshot into what's going on in the South. I do want to say, obviously, we recorded that interview a little earlier in this summer. And so now, they're available in more products. And you can check out BayouCityHemp.com as well as some of the other URLs that Ben mentioned in our interview to find their specific products. But moving on to some news stories I wanted to get to because I thought they were worth your attention. The first one here, maybe not that surprising given some context, but the headline still kind of grabbed me. Over 93% of cannabis sales in Washington, D.C. remain unregulated. This was published August 23rd, and the website is CannabisIndustryData.com. Voters in D.C. approved adult-use cannabis legalization back in 2014. However, recreational sales were still prohibited in D.C. due to Congress refraining from granting the district permission to conduct regulated adult-use cannabis commerce. Medical sales are permitted in D.C. Unregulated cannabis sales have proliferated there during the last decade, according to D.C. Council. They say shops are selling over $600 million worth of unregulated products every year. By comparison, sales at regulated outlets, so medical sales, were roughly $37.5 million last year, less than 7% of the total estimated annual unregulated sales. D.C. lawmakers approved a medical cannabis legalization measure in May of 2010, and in January of 2023, the Medical Cannabis Amendment Act became effective, and that measure overhauled D.C.'s medical cannabis program, making it more accessible to patients, which is great news. But it's so strange to me that, D.C., the capital, is really resisting the adult recreational recreational market, especially given what a cash cow the unregulated market clearly is there. A few interesting bullet points included in this data. 74% of people in the U.S. live in a state where recreational or medical cannabis is legal. There are nearly 15,000 cannabis dispensaries in the U.S. California has the most overall at just over 3,650. Oklahoma has the most dispensaries per capita, 36 dispensaries for every 100,000 residents. Total legal cannabis sales in the U.S. are expected to reach $31.5 billion this year, according to a recent analysis by Whitney Economics. That is all I'm going to read of this article. There's a lot of other great information there for you, but I found that to be interesting. The capital of the United States, when all of this approval, when all these poll numbers are showing that people want adult use recreational cannabis and all this money is flowing around into people's pockets who are in the industry after they've regulated it and legalized adult use, D.C. remains stuck in the mud, stuck in yesterday, not at all interested in some of this money that is right there, just waiting to be scooped up. But either way, it does make sense as to why then that 93% of sales is unregulated. If they don't allow regulated adult rec sales, then just like everywhere else, people are getting it just on the black market. And that's what they're going to do until you regulate it. Moving on to another story. This is from WTFreud.com. What the Freud, I suppose. This headline reads, New study reveals CBG's potential to reduce anxiety and stress without side effects. This was posted by Brian, no last name, August 9th of this year under Mental Health. A recent groundbreaking clinical trial has provided the first evidence that cannabigerol, CBG, a lesser-known cannabinoid derived from hemp, could offer promising therapeutic benefits, particularly in reducing anxiety and stress. The trial, conducted by a team of researchers, represents the first human clinical study to evaluate the acute effects of CBG on anxiety, stress, and mood, shedding light on the potential of this compound as an alternative, that is, to conventional anxiety treatments. The study's findings are significant, I'll say. CBG was found to reduce global feelings of anxiety and stress without causing any intoxication, cognitive impairment, or other subjective drug effects typically associated with cannabis use. This discovery is particularly noteworthy in the context of the rapid expansion of the legal cannabis market, where consumers are increasingly seeking out products with specific therapeutic benefits, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. Key findings, the trial revealed a significant decrease in anxiety among participants who received CBG on a 10-point scale. Participants reported an average reduction of anxiety by 0.95 points, equivalent to a 26.5% decrease from their baseline anxiety levels. In contrast, those in the placebo group experienced a 0.66-point reduction, representing a 22.5% decrease. These results suggest CBG may have a more pronounced effect on reducing anxiety than the placebo, although further research is needed to fully understand the extent of the benefits. They go on to say that the research also found CBG had a significant effect on reducing subjective stress ratings, and they also list the surprising finding of CBG's impact on verbal memory. Study discovered CBG not only avoided the common cognitive impairments associated with other cannabinoids like THC, but also enhanced participants' verbal memory. This enhancement was most evident in learning trials, where participants in the CBG condition recalled more words compared to those in the placebo condition. This unexpected result opens the door for further investigation into CBG's potential cognitive benefits. That's all for the key findings portion. There are more issues that are brought up in this article, implications, future research, and some citations and whatnot. I've linked it below like I do with all the articles I read on the show. Highly recommend you check that out for yourself. But CBG, how about it? Reducing anxiety and stress, possibly increasing your verbal memory without the intoxicating effects of THC. Pretty great. Also, exactly getting to what I talked about at the beginning of the show, which is that if you're looking for specific benefits, like maybe you've got a family function coming up and, you don't want to be stoned, you don't want to be red-eyed and awkward, gripping your chair and not talking to anybody, but you also want a little bit of the edge taken off. Maybe you've got, maybe your sister has a new boyfriend that you're a little nervous about meeting. Maybe you're, not looking forward to the same conversations that come up or whatever. Maybe you've just got some issue that you're not looking forward to dealing with. CBG might be exactly what you're looking for, So next time you're at the dispensary, if you're looking for something to lower your anxiety and stress, look for something with CBG, another exciting cannabinoid that is now being sort of exposed to the masses thanks to this research and the ever-moving goalposts and information that we're learning about cannabis. Finally, I want to tell you about an article from Marijuana Moment, a publication I bring up a lot on the show. I like a lot of the work they do. Kyle Yeager published this. The headline is reading, Biden's marijuana clemency action is most popular of all presidential pardons in U.S. history, according to a new poll. This came out last week on the 27th. President Joe Biden's mass marijuana pardons are the most popular acts of presidential clemency in U.S. history, with bipartisan majorities in favor of forgiving people with prior cannabis possession offenses. The YouGov survey was put out Monday of last week, asked respondents whether they agree or disagree with more than a dozen historical pardons across multiple administrations. Biden's cannabis pardons for people who've committed federal offenses provided the most popular by a wide margin, with 69% backing the move. Only 18% opposed it. Only two other pardon events had majority support in the poll. Biden's clemency for former service members who faced penalties for offenses related to their sexual orientation or gender identity, 55% were in favor of that, and a mass pardon issued by former President Jimmy Carter for Americans who resisted the Vietnam War draft. 54% were in approval of that. The article goes on listing some other presidential pardons, and I think that's really, really cool stuff. Definitely check the article out for yourself, but this just kind of gets at what I said earlier about the popularity of legal cannabis. These polls are coming out 82, 83% of adults in the U.S. want cannabis legalized in some fashion. Even if you're in a state that doesn't, agree with this, maybe it's more conservative and they won't do it. What people want, I think, ultimately is for the federal government to just get out of the way and let states determine for themselves whether or not to regulate and sell legal cannabis to adults. Medical cannabis should be legal all across the country, full stop. That should be it, period. And I hope we're there soon. But even, after that, I think that adult recreational use and legal cannabis sales should be available for people in states that decide to do that. The federal government should just be getting out of the way with this. And I think that this poll showing the popularity of President Biden's cannabis pardons, charging people with possession, at a time when the prohibition was still at its height, that popularity of that decision just sort of shows another element of the popularity of legal cannabis overall. The country has moved on. They are in a different position than they were 50 years ago. I don't think even 50 years ago the country really wanted cannabis to be prohibited. I think that the administration in charge, Nixon's administration, and I think the DEA, I think they had their own agenda and they were tying cannabis to certain, policies and politics and things that they wanted, issues that they wanted to use to their political advantage. I don't think the country ever wanted a prohibition of cannabis at the level that we've seen. And so now here we are in 2024, we're a decade into states legalizing these things. You've got people reporting how much it helps their lives, how much it improves their quality of life with various issues. You've got states raking in new tax revenue from these cannabis sales. And if you're if you're in Colorado, it goes to the schools, it goes to wherever, in the state that they vote for it to go. And if you're a business owner, you make these products, you're raking it in, maybe you become rich, doing something that, for so long was illegal in this country. As Ben said in our interview, since the prohibition, we've never had a prohibition of alcohol, we have never had something like this, where a substance, a behavior that so much of the country engaged in went from criminal and illegal overnight to legal and acceptable the next day. And when that happens, it only follows logically that you need to pardon the people, nonviolent people who only were charged with possession of this drug, of this plant. It stands to reason that they then should be pardoned. Because when the country changed its mind, when the goalposts have moved and now this is legal, it is hypocritical. And it's actively causing the suffering of people who you put in jail yesterday because of yesterday's laws. And now that today those laws have changed, those people deserve their freedom. And it makes sense to me that President Biden's decision to pardon those people was the most popular pardoning decision of all time. So that is all I've got for you on this episode. I thought those news stories were worth bringing to your attention. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Ben Meggs. Check out Bayou City Hemp's products. I'm looking forward to trying them out when I can get to a dispensary that's got them near. In the meantime, try these strawberry Spacewalk X Bites. Check out selectbetter.com to find out where you can find these. Let me know what you thought. Tell me if you went on a spacewalk like I did. Text Cannabis Man at the link below in the description notes and tell me what you thought if you've tried these. Maybe it was just me. Like I said, I kind of screwed up and took 2 of these on an empty stomach. I totally earned what I got there. So I'm not saying these are bad, but, let me know what you thought. Always curious to hear what you thought about that or any of the news stories I brought up. If you're heading to the Illinois Craft Showcase down in Tilton, let me know what you think about that. Say hey to Jason Brown and the people at Illinois News Joint or Elisa Brill and those from Sweet Buzz. If you try out any of their delicious sounding products, let me know. Really looking forward to reviewing those for you. But in the meantime, you can follow the show at C-Man Podcast on the socials. It's the Cannabis Man Podcast Facebook page and YouTube channel. And do me a favor, like I said, leave a rating or review if you haven't already. Subscribe to the show. Tell your friends about it. Keep moving us up the charts. It really helps me out when you do that. And I can't thank you enough again for helping spread this show out to 85 countries around the world. I've got listeners here, as well as, like I said, the top 10% of all podcasts around the globe, critically acclaimed, and listed the #1 indie news podcast by Good Pods. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back again next week with another interview, more news stories, and more perspective about legal cannabis. Be sure to enjoy some cannabis, get outside, enjoy the weather wherever you are. Call those you love, those connections you hold dear. Tell people how you feel, give them a hug. I promise you, you'll never regret it. Have a great weekend. We'll talk next week on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Good Son.